Hello everyone, my name is Faisal and I'm going to present the letter of Martin Luther King from Birmingham jail and share some of the points that he used in his letter that he used to seek persuasion. Martin Luther King begins by addressing the clergymen about their question of outsiders coming in and separate chaos. He states that he is serving as the president of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state, and he has organizational ties with Birmingham, so he came to this region as an acceptance of the invitation from local affiliate in Birmingham. Secondly, he says as Paul left his village to spread the good message around the world, he believed he also should go to the region where there is injustice, and that was his reason to arrive to Birmingham. Furthermore, King puts an argument that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and that we cannot afford this outside agitator idea anywhere in this country. In response to the statement that the steps they are taking are untimely actions, that the new administration should have been given the time to act. King said that even though Mr. Botwell is much more articulate and gentle than Mr. Connor, both promote segregation and follow the same principles. He argues that although he sees a hope in Mr. Botwell, that he will be reasonable enough to see the futility of massive resistance to desegregation. But he will not see this without pressure from the devotees of the civil rights, and that we have not met a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and non-violence pressure, and that freedom should be demanded from the oppressor as he would not be willing to give it on their own. So let's move on to the next slide. Over the concern of their willingness to break laws, Martin Luther King argues that how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others in the face of what is happening on the basis of segregation? Now, he argues how can one determine the law that is just and the law that is unjust. He states any law that aligns with the moral values or the law of God that uplifts the human personality is a just law. And on the other hand, any law that is against the moral law and degrades human personality is unjust law. So we have to make that distinction and decide whether which law to follow, because the law that is unjust is no law at all. He then continues making further distinctions between the two types of law, and also states that sometimes the law that is unjust can also seems to be just, by giving the example of his arrest over parade without permit. He says that it may look fine, but when the ordinance is used to preserve segregation, then it becomes unjust. Martin included emotions in his arguments while seeking persuasion. He pointed out that the negotiation sessions with some of the leaders of the economic community did not turn out as good as they should be. The promises, such as to remove the humiliating signs from the stores, were not met, and the promises were broken while the signs remained. So there was no alternative to be involved with a direct action. He showed his grief. Even that direct action did not involve any violence, he emphasized the point that we started having workshops about nonviolence, and also repeatedly ask ourselves the question like, would we be able to accept blows without retaliating, and would we be able to put in jails? When asked why did you choose direct action over negotiation, King purposefully includes the emotional argument, such as giving an example of Socrates creating tension in the minds of individuals so that they could raise from bondage of myths and half truth, and same was the case here. By the end of his writing, when King is using aesthetics to persuade his audience and justify his stance of being an extremist, he beautifully exemplifies other great men in history who were once labeled as extremists. This includes Jesus, who was an extremist for love and said, "Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you." He puts example of Amos Paul, John Bunyan, Thomas Jefferson, and describe them metaphorically as being extremist, but extremist for the good cause, and so he himself pledges to follow this path, because just as Jesus, the ones who are once considered extremists, but struggle for the good cause, raise above the environment. While talking about the freedom of the black people to protest peacefully, Martin uses the piece as concerned with a contingency in order to seek persuasion. He states that it is the moral right of black Americans to protest for their rights and they should not be at all concerned extremists because they have taken every measure to not be extremists who harm the state and harm others. If the emotions of these people do not come out in non-violent ways, they will come out in violent ways, and history proved it. So the journey to seek justified should be let content. Exactly after a month of writing his letter from Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King is seen standing on a balcony at the A.G. Gaston Motel overlooking a parking lot during the campaign in Birmingham. The source is taken from Library of Congress. Martin is seen standing on a balcony, well dressed, focused on the full resort to carry on his mission. It seems that his imprisonment could not do much to his motivation and his faith, although he is still advocating for his fellow brothers through campaigns on this day. He is trying to keep the protest non-violence and without any harm, and seeks to come to result through talks and negotiations. I would say he was a great man.